I wanted to take the time to read this out, and to make this video because I know that in my worst withdrawals, I'm not able to read a huge article, and I feel like this article is really important and it seriously helps. So, here it goes. And I probably won't be looking at the camera a lot because I've got to read the screen. Alright, here we go. This will hopefully be encouraging email to make you feel safe and encouraged. As some of you may know, my degrees are in speech language, pathology, BA and MS. As part of my master's study, a big portion of my classes were in neuroanatomy and psychology. I learned firsthand how to look at a person who had just undergone a stroke or brain injury and read the symptoms, the radiology reports, the doctor's notes, and based on those symptoms to form an image in my mind of what was affected in the brain injury, as well as how to formulate a treatment plan to help that person rehabilitate. For a therapist in a hospital, it is much more than speech and language. It is about reteaching how to swallow, eat, rebuild memory, rebuild concentration and attention, rebuilding focus, rebuilding executive functioning skills, planning and acting on a plan, much anything that is involved in thinking that helps you get out of a coma, out of a hospital, and back to work and school. I had no idea I would ever personally undergo a brain injury, but in so much as I have now indeed endured one, I often laid there in waves and attempted to analyze and decipher what was happening in my brain as I healed. I thought you all might like to read this. It gives potential answers to the why questions we have about what is happening to us mentally. First of all, a truth to accept is that we heal. I have seen people emerge from comas who cannot remember who they are, and they heal. They can't remember how to walk, and we do. They can't write their names, we can. They cannot tell you the year or the president. I was so bad I was unsure of this at times, but generally I was oriented to this. They often cannot remember family members. We can. Our derealization can be hideous, but we remember them. They have to work through many hours of therapy to heal, but most of them do, and from traumatic physical brain trauma that can tear tissues and tear nerves. We have none of that. We don't have to undergo therapy, we just simply have to wait. Most of us, me included, didn't expect the temporary brain injury that we got when jumping off of benzos, but I am starting to realize through my own experience and my educational background that there is a purpose in every symptom we have. I've had months and months to analyze what is likely going on in the brain at a gross level, and I want to attempt to explain certain symptoms in a way that we can visualize so that they are less scary and more telling of the healing that is happening. First off, let's start with GABA and glutamate. Most of you may know how this works by this point, but for those that don't, we have a huge nervous system of millions of nerves and neurons. They don't touch each other. They are separated by a teeny space in between. However, they communicate via chemicals. The two main chemicals in the entire nervous system are the big guns. They are GABA and glutamate. They are both at work at all times in the central nervous system. It isn't like one is working and then the other is working. They're both always working in tandem to control every aspect of movement, sensation, everything. They take the incoming information and appropriately pass it along. They trim up the information appropriately so that we can process it. They are like the steel structure of a building. The entire building needs the steel structure to stand. GABA is inhibitory. If a nerve releases GABA, it is to inhibit function. This could be to slow it down, or it could be to limit the sensory input so that we can process it. In the same way, GABA might be released to help steady your hand while doing something like painting a very detailed picture. GABA shores up movements to make them more fluid. That's just in a nutshell. Of course, it does a lot more than this, but the idea is that GABA is present in the entire central nervous system and always working to balance every sensation and movement. Likewise, glutamate is the balance to GABA. It is the excitatory transmitter. It fires to speed things up, to initiate action, to make things go. There's a lot more to it, but glutamate is kind of the opposite of GABA. Both are required to work at all times. Neurons are always firing off GABA and glutamate on an endless cycle all throughout the nervous system. It's quite amazing, really. What does a benzo do? If a person is anxious, they may be so stressed and that they cannot overcome a very traumatic event or anxious situation. If a doctor prescribes a benzo, the benzo comes in and sort of holds the door open for all of the GABA in the system to flood into the nerves, even when that is not what the nerves would actually want to occur. The immediate effect is that everything in the body slows down and is inhibited. This might be helpful during surgery for anesthesia or for a seizure disorder. Yes, the benzo by definition will act on GABA and slow everything down. And yes, the net effect of this is that a person may feel drowsy, calm, and less anxious. Everything is being inhibited. And in general, taking a benzo for one day is okay. When the benzo is gone, the body just reverts back to regular operation. However, if a person takes a benzo day after day, while indeed the person feels less anxious, the body begins to realize that it cannot do the things that it needs to do in this very slowed down neuron state. It cannot make hormones, it cannot create enzymes, and it cannot digest correctly. It cannot keep a heart going efficiently, it cannot get enough oxygen, and on and on and on. The body needs to run at normal speed, not this inhibited speed all slowed down. But what can the body do? It cannot remove the benzo from the system. The only choice the body has to maintain a regular speed is to do two things. It can turn off its own GABA receptors, thereby rendering those benzos unable to affect the GABA in the system, and it can grow more excitatory glutamate receptors to counteract the slowdown, and that's kind of exactly what happens. Only this isn't true balance either. The body does the best it can, but over time things begin to suffer. The body cannot make enough serotonin in this state, or dopamine. Some things get made in excess, and other things do not get made enough. During this time, a person may not be aware this is all going on. He may not be able to perceive any difference, but one day the person may wake up sad or not sleeping well, or unable to remember things fully, or his vision doesn't look right, and it becomes apparent the person has hit tolerance. The body is taking the same amount of drug, but try as it might, it just cannot overcome what has occurred. It can take weeks, months, or years to hit tolerance. Some people do and some don't. Before to get off benzos. I did, and it took me 9 months to hit tolerance, but it was fast. Once I hit it, I could not sleep more than 6 hours on all that Klonopin and Ambien. I couldn't remember things last week. I was crying all the time. Something was wrong. The process to reverse this takes a while. GABA receptors have to upregulate and effectively reopen or grow back. Glutamate receptors must downregulate or effectively turn off or prune back. And in this mix, all the smaller monoamines, neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine must somehow find a way to synthesize in the mix. Through weeks and months, the body is rebuilding millions of neurons and changing pathways, rebuilding GABA, downregulating glutamate, rebuilding serotonin, rebuilding dopamine, rebuilding norepinephrine. And all the enzymes and hormones that need to be made are attempting to be made while this is going on. Basically, you have a building where all the major steel structures are to be rebuilt at different times while people are coming and going in the building and attempting to work. It would be like if the World Trade Center towers hadn't completely fallen but had crumbled inside in different places. Imagine if you were to rebuild the tower while people were coming and going to work in the building. You'd have to set up a temporary elevator, but when you need to fix part of that area, you'd have to tear down that elevator and set up a temporary elevator somewhere else, and so on. You have to build, work around, and then tear down, and then build again, and then work around, and then build. All the while people are coming and going, all while the furniture is being replaced, all while the walls are getting repainted, all while this is going on inside the building. No doubt it would be chaotic. This is exactly what is happening with windows and waves. The windows are where their body has got it right for a day or so, and then the building shifts and the brain works on something else, and it's chaos again. While another temporary pathway is set up to reroute function until repairs are made. And just like the Twin Towers, it's possible, but the building is a major effort and it takes a good year or more sometimes. Now look at the new tower that stands at ground zero. It's taller and a symbol of freedom, just like you will be. Okay, what is happening in that chaos? What parts of the brain are responsible for these symptoms? Now, I don't know the following based on research because not enough research has been done yet, but based on my studies in neuroanatomy and my own withdrawal experiences, here's how I have analyzed what is happening during wave symptoms. Remember, I've had to look at radiology reports of brain damage and estimate what a patient might present with, so this is very similar. Instead of a radiology report showing me what has been damaged, I'm using my own brain symptoms to summarize what's going on. Let me first list brain structures and their functions. This will help you understand where things happen in the brain and when symptoms occur, what might be happening. I'm probably not going to say some of these right, but bear with me. Amygdala is the fear center in the brain. It's a teeny part in the middle of your brain. Fear is protective. It's great if you need to assess something that is dangerous and to act, like if a rabid dog were chasing you. But it's hard to recovery when it's all you feel for months. But the fear is not truly in your mind, it's in your brain. There is too much glutamate acting here in the amygdala and not enough GABA, so the nerves are firing off in the fear center when nothing scary is really there in your environment. It is normal for that to happen given the fear, agoraphobia, fear of water, I skipped a line. It is normal for that to happen given the circumstance physiologically. But it feels awful, doesn't it? I know, but it's just a brain structure. This can account for fear, agoraphobia, fear of water, fear of anything. It's not that you're really scared of the moon, it's that you're almost constant fear because this brain structure is healing. The glutamate is pruning back and the GABA receptors are opening back up. It may or may not continue for a while. It will abate and then come back, but eventually the brain will get it right. Hippocampus. This is the memory center of the brain. It ties in old memories to emotions. The same thing is happening here that is happening in the amygdala with GABA and glutamate. So, voila. You get intrusive memories from all times in your life. It's wild and wicked and woolly, but it can't hurt you. And if you can learn to visualize this what is happening, then you can learn to be objective and realize it's normal. And like the amygdala, it will come and go and frustrate you, but it will go away when the physiology is restored. Hypothalamus. This is the structure that is responsible for regulating body temperature. In early withdrawal, my body temperature would drop in 96 degrees in waves, and then 3 hours later it would return to normal. I would literally freeze in terror in bed for hours. I am sure it is more complicated than just the hypothalamus, but I could picture this part of my brain returning and restricting, and it was less scary that way. The following structures in the brain are part of the gray matter, or the cortex, and what we consider to be the higher brain, the thinking and processing part. Frontal lobe. This is the part of the brain behind the front of the skull. It is responsible for planning things, for making decisions, for inhibiting emotions appropriately. It is the part of the brain you need if you want to make a sandwich and need to get out the ingredients and actually make the sandwich. I have seen people with brain injury be able to tell you how to make a sandwich, but when they are standing there in front of all the ingredients, they cannot actually move to act to make it. They have frontal lobe damage. They can tell someone how to make it, but they cannot themselves initiate doing it. As you can imagine, with therapy and time to heal, this goes away, and we are a lot like this, but it goes away for us too. I cannot organize my children's toys just 4 months ago. Not a simple room of toys. I didn't know where to start, and I literally could not mentally do it. I imagine this is partly why no frontal lobe GABA and too much glutamate. But now check out this post that I'm typing. Obviously that has changed. This calms down and these things come back. Occipital lobe. I'm sorry, I probably am pronouncing these so wrong. This is the vision center. It's at the back of your skull in recovery. My nerves have been all whacked here. I see things as too bright, possibly due to this lobe, and or the actual visual nerves in the eyes. But no doubt people see things that aren't there. Vision is distorted, things go blurry, colors are totally off, brightness is off, and there's 100 symptoms possible in vision alone. But again, it's a matter of time. Vestibular system. This is a system of semicircular canals in the inner ear that are responsible for making you feel balanced in the space. When this is off or damaged temporarily, you feel dizzy. Oh man, was I dizzy early off. I felt like I lived in a funhouse. Over time, a combination of this vestibular system and my damaged visual system made things look like they were leaning. To this day, one eye sees things correctly and the other eye sees things as slightly leaning. And it's not that the eye itself is seeing them that way. The healing vestibular system is working with the eye to tell the brain that that object looks like it is moving leftwards or leaning, but it isn't. In waves, this can happen bad and then be gone, poof, in a window. This is just the vestibular system healing. It's gotten way better. Temporal lobe. These lobes are on the side of your brain, on each side near your ear. It makes up the whole left and right side of your brain. This is where auditory information is processed, including hearing itself, but also the meaning of what we are hearing, as well as part of speech and language, emotion, and a bunch of other stuff. In early recovery, someone was talking to me and I couldn't tell you what they said past the first sentence. My auditory processing was all messed up. I couldn't picture what a person was saying to me in real time, and by the time I caught up to them, I was lost and they were talking about something else. Also, when I was laying there in bed, I could hear things that weren't there in the noise of my box fan. I'd hear the fan blowing, but I'd also heard like sickening circus music. I believe this is because there's a noise coming into my ear, but my brain cannot adequately prune what it is hearing at different frequencies because there's not enough GABA to inhibit it to create something meaningful. There was all this noise and my brain was just firing off of glutamate. So instead of actually processing the noise, it was firing off ideas about what it was hearing, and they were all wrong. I would be hearing what sounded like circus music, and at the same time my poor brain was looking through my hippocampus to find all the memories I've ever had of being at the circus. And then I'm reliving those memories, and at the same time my amygdala is getting fired upon, so I'm in fear. So I'm a quivering mess of a person laying in bed, hearing and seeing things and remembering times in my childhood and scared to pieces. Seriously, I just felt crazy. But not in my mind, it was my brain. It's the brain, and it's normal. The structures in the brain are obligated to work this way. That brings me to my point. Why do all of us in benzo recovery have generally the same symptoms? Well, it may make you feel calmer to realize that our brain structures are not broken. They do exactly what they are supposed to do under the circumstances, and all of our perceptions of what we are seeing, feeling, and hearing are normal because of the parts of our brain that are firing off are doing so because they do work. They work just as they were intended to, and they are actually healing as all this firing is going on. Why the depression and anxiety? Why depression and anxiety? It is so complicated, but the whole system is interdependent. At the same time as all this stuff is going on, the entire body is trying to heal, and every place GABA and glutamate naturally act. And that would be everywhere. The intestine, stomach, eyeballs, skin, toenails. Seriously, where do we not have nerves? Anything we didn't have as a pre-existing condition is fair game for being affected by the recovery that takes place. This includes the body's own ability to make serotonin that is required to feel balanced and happy. And you guessed it. This is not being made very efficiently in a building that is under major construction, so you may get a day or so feeling good, and then boom, that's gone until you can make enough serotonin. Oh, and by the way, serotonin helps tell the nerves when to release GABA and glutamate. So on top of needing GABA to make serotonin, you need serotonin to regulate the release of GABA into the system. How much more interconnected can you get? God, it's a wonder it knows how to heal it all, but it does. Amazing to me, really. This is just some limited information to give the idea of what is going on in physiology. Obviously, this is very cursory and not super detailed, but there is a bigger point here than what parts of the brain are affected. The point really is, if you know that symptoms are tied to parts of a normal brain under reconstruction, then you can begin to rest a little more easy in your mind that under the circumstances, the symptoms themselves are a good sign. Without intrusive memories, as awful as they are, especially when mixed with fear, but without them, your memory itself would not heal. It is healing. And when you're having intrusives, try to think of it that way. Tap your finger to your temple and say to yourself, I know what this is. This is my hippocampus healing, because it is. And if it were not healing, you would not be having these symptoms. Any part of the brain or body that needs to heal is going to experience something in the form of symptoms, and you are going to notice that. But it is part of the process that is inevitably returning to the balance that it could not achieve while we were putting those pills in our mouths. And if you're tapering, this is happening, just likely with less trauma than what would happen when I cold turkeyed. So, when you have symptoms, know that symptoms themselves are a way for you to know that healing is taking place. And finally, realize that the drug is gone. This is withdrawal. Yes. Okay, we call it withdrawal, but it really is recovery. The benzos are gone, the evil drug is no longer there. The symptoms that are left are not the enemy, and that's our brains doing the exact right thing. What's happening to our brain at this point is not the benzo beast, it is our brain recovering. Not to degrade anyone who calls it the benzo beast. I get that. But just so you know, you are not fighting a beast. You don't even need to fight it. Just wait it out. All that reconstruction is happening on your building, and soon the frame will be back standing better than before. The furniture will be inside, the elevators will go all the way to the top again, and the people can come and go and work like a well-oiled machine. Don't feel you need to fight the reconstruction. It is just healing, and all that is happening to us is a sign of that. Hope this helps somebody a little, or maybe a family member. And if you are a family member, please realize that those of us in recovery are no more in control of how we feel or what we experience than people who have undergone a brain trauma in a car accident. Please be patient with us because our brains are healing and we are in the process of reconstruction, and our function is temporarily enabled, then disabled, and then enabled, and then disabled again. And that is totally normal and expected. We can no more help than a person can want to wake up out of a coma. And it happens when the brain is able and not out of sheer will. But it does happen. So please stand by us and say loving things and reassure us every day. Notice our improvements and tell us what they are. Encourage us when we feel good and when we don't. Just hold us and hug us and tell us it will be okay. Anything you would say or do for a family member that had a car accident and a brain injury. Please do that for us and be patient, we are getting there. Addendum. I got a great PM from a buddy asking what about physical symptoms of pain, and I think it deserves some theoretical attention. I want to take some time to add some theories about pain and physical symptoms such as burning, akathisia, and tingling, prickling, and things that happen during recovery of this nature. I will also add this as addendum to the original post on page 1. First off, let it be said that I can only theorize as to this. I am not a doctor, but I do think logical theories are helpful because they give us a story and mindful logic to cope with in the meantime as we're going through this. So these are the multiple sources of information that I'm tying together. Some are from nerve regeneration, and some are from what we know about how the brain works. And some or all of this is likely to go on when it comes to pain and skin/muscle sensations. First off, I think it's good to quote. A good quote comes from a plastic surgery practice that has published things on nerve regeneration after injury. The quote follows: "The usual events associated with normal nerve regeneration can be painful. As the regenerating ends of the nerve called sprouts travel, they make contact with each other and with structural proteins. The neural impulses generated by this activity may be interpreted by your brain as pain. It should be expected that for the time period associated with nerve regeneration, there may be pain sufficient to need therapy and/or pain medication. Just understanding that this is expected to occur and is good pain or pain for a good reason is enough to help many people adjust to its presence. This condition is not just one of pain. It is associated with overactivity of the sympathetic nervous system, so that the area of pain is a different color, like pink or purple, and is usually a different temperature, like cooler, than a surrounding non-painful skin." Well, this article isn't about benzo-related nerve damage. It is talking about nerve damage caused by physical trauma of crushing, cutting, or compressing nerves. But what can we glean from it nonetheless? We can assume that if the sympathetic nervous system is involved in the presence of pain related to healing nerves, and it is, that it is also normal for us to have pain as we are undergoing healing. When I was in earliest recovery, I would often get out of the shower and have pink spots all over my feet and my abdomen. At first they were bright pink for about 2 months, and then they faded out and I don't have them anymore. I have no idea what they were, but they were not there 12 days prior to my rapid taper, and then they showed up. The spots weren't symmetrical, they followed no pattern, but they were always in the same place on my skin. And only after getting out of the shower. It is easy to see how nervous system could be involved in skin redness, irritation, and weird feelings associated with recovery. Likewise, throughout recovery, I've had and continue to have cooling, burning, prickling, and occasional stabbing sensations. I've had it feel like my skin was wet when there was no water on it. Again, though this is all normal, and like the quote says above, just understanding that this is expected to occur and is good pain, or pain for a good reason, is enough to help many people adjust to its presence. And although it doesn't make the pain feel any better in the moment, it does help us not to become anxious about it. It's normal and it's a sign of healing. What about akathisia? Well, from the reading, the exact cause of akathisia is not 100% conclusive, but it seems to be related to dopaminergic and or noradrenergic activity in the brain. Dopamine and norepinephrine, or noradrenaline, as it is also called, these are just neurotransmitters, and it doesn't look to me to be exactly conclusive why this happens. But akathisia can also happen after the use of many psychoactive drugs, not just benzos, and likely because anything that alters brain chemistry can alter dopamine and norepinephrine. So, okay, that makes sense. We all took brain-altering drugs, and now some of us have akathisia. Guess what? It seems so normal. It's not fun, but it's normal. And it can come and go, and then go away eventually. For me, I didn't get akathisia at all until month 8. It was a surprise. It was intense and awful, but it passed in a few weeks. Since then, I've had it off and on, but not to that degree. And now it is mostly just annoying. Something as simple as a good hard cry in the bathtub can completely remove it at times. And other times I just have to wait for a wave to pass. But all in all, from this information, it's normal, and the fact that it is coming and going, and I'm getting hit here and there, is a sign that the wheels are turning up there in the noggin, and things are shifting and attempting to rebalance, so we can keep that quote in mind. It's normal, and while the sensation itself is very uncomfortable, if not painful, it can be regarded as a good pain. If we are able to recognize that our feeling it means we have a brain and nerves that are regaining their ability to function. Likewise, as a scab heals over a wound, the new skin forms underneath can be itchy. Why does this occur? Why does a scab itch? The itch of a healing wound is caused by the growth of new cells underneath the old scab. The new skin cells would be growing underneath, and as they form a new layer of skin, then the scab sometimes becomes more tightly stretched over this zone of activity. This can make it feel itchy. The itch sensation for burn survivors may be tingling feeling caused by nerves regrowing, or from dry skin caused by the lack of natural oil production.